So tomorrow morning, we're going to get up early and go fishing. John Henry Newman has this quote, 4-word quote, "I have my mission." When he's talking about nobody else has my mission, no one else can do it for me. I was created unique, and what God has put me here to do is for me alone to do. I have my mission. Maybe one of those great phrases for a motto on your program of life, to put on your wall, to put on a sticky note on your mirror in the humanities wing. No one else can do it for me. So we're going to contemplate the call of the first disciples. It's one of those meditations on decision and giving the direction to my life. So we're going to use Luke 5 verses 1 to 11. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, and he saw 2 boats by the lake. But the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which by accident was Simon's. I added by accident. Okay. He asked him to put out a little from the land. He sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, Put out into the deep, and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat, who by chance were James and John. And they came to help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. Earlier, I mentioned the story of Captain America, Steve Rogers. He's a good example of this meditation too, because of his desire. There's that great scene where he's applying to join the army for the 5th time, and he's at this medical exam. You hear somebody whispering something. He's all kind of paranoid, and the camera zooms into this sign on the wall behind him. It says, "It is illegal to falsify your enlistment form." He's given like 5 different names, 5 different, addresses. And his military officer steps in, so Steve is kind of afraid. And then a scientist walks in, and he asks him, "Where are you really from?" And he lists the 5 places that he put on his 5 enlistment forms. So he's like thinking, "Oh no, they know that I falsified my form." And the guy says, "What interests me is how many times you tried. Do you want to kill some Nazis?" And he's still kind of scared, so he goes, "Is this a test?" They're like, "Yes." And he's like, "I don't want to kill anybody. I just hate bullies." Classic line. But today, we need people to enlist as followers of Christ, real hardcore 100% followers of Christ. It requires decision, but it doesn't require being perfect. It requires commitment and putting your heart into it, but it doesn't require having a perfect slate. Jesus qualifies the called instead of calling the qualified. I told you about how bad I was at Italian. Once, at the beginning of my time in Rome, I was also asked to make phone calls to benefactors. So we were given a list. Most of them were very elderly people. And we had this long Excel list of people to call with their phone numbers, the name, the phone number. So I had to, I was making terrible calls and failing at it pretty much. And I got this guy named Enzo on the list. So I called, and a lady answered the phone, and I asked if Enzo was there. And she starts bawling her eyes out. Enzo è morto! So her husband had died since the last time somebody tried calling. And I had no idea what to say. I had not been prepared for consoling a grieving wife in Italian. They didn't cover that in the Italian class. So maybe you can ask them when you take Italian class, please teach me how to console a grieving wife. Later I was great at Italian. Eventually I got the chance to work on the team of the chaplaincy at the university. So I got to work with real live Italian young people, which is even harder than grieving old ladies, And at one point when I was finishing my studies, I considered staying there in Italy to do my ministry there. Imagine, I would have never met you if I had stayed there. I probably would have met you, right? We all went to Rome. So anyway, Jesus doesn't call the qualified. You don't have all the gifts it takes to do his will. And Simon Peter definitely didn't. When he fell at the knees of Jesus, he meant something by it. I'm a sinful man. I like how The Chosen tries to paint a little picture of what kind of sins he committed. But I don't think he would be so direct about it, and I don't think he would be so forward about his sinfulness if there wasn't some kind of shame in his past. And Jesus called him. We could take the story of Matthew, it would be even better. The tax collector. So, the goal here is that we want to be totally disposed to do whatever God might ask of us. It's, again, that freedom of spirit that we contemplated at the beginning with Mary at the Annunciation, in those first meditations we did. The goal was freedom of spirit. I want to be disposed to do whatever God wants and not putting any obstacles. What in my heart could be getting in the way of full, greater response to God? I want to accept and embrace his plan, his invitation, much more generously than I have until now. I want to strive to respond in a way that's actually fitting to his call. Doesn't mean I've got to have it all figured out. Simon Peter definitely didn't have it all figured out. But I want to respond. I want to respond better. I want to respond more. To love you more, to follow you more. You can think that some people out there are okay with giving God a little bit. When you're out on ministry, with all the mercy and respect and love towards people that we strive to give them, there are still some people who are okay with only going to Mass on Sundays, or they're even okay with not going to Mass every Sunday, and they think they're living an okay Christian life, right? We don't want to be ones who are okay with giving God, some of my heart, some of my mind, some of my efforts. That would be just foolish. It would be foolish right now to stop at continuing to give God what you've given him in the past, what you've given him up until now. It would be foolish to say, okay, I'm there. I've gotten to the point of generosity that I want to get to. I've gotten to the point of holiness that I want to get to. I can rest now. Lord, you may let your servant live the rest of his life in peace. No. Let's go all the way with him. Let's love him all the way. So it's a real conversion. And God willing, today is the day that we can make that real generous act towards following him. So I invite you just to contemplate the scene and relive it. Go there in Christ. Go back in time through him. God is present there. And then stop at every moment throughout the scene and speak to him and look into his heart and enjoy the time there on the boat with him. Contemplate as much of the scene as you want, even the part beforehand. You can even go back to the night before, fishing all night long and not catching anything. Maybe the frustration, maybe the annoyance, maybe feeling useless, and maybe Simon was already thinking of changing occupations at that point when Jesus got there. Then I love to look at the scene where Jesus arrives in the morning. Maybe even before the crowd got there, Jesus was there observing. Maybe he saw them trying to fish all night. But I like to think that when Jesus arrived at the beach, he was scanning the beach. He was laser focused. He knew exactly what he was there for that day. There was nothing accidental about it. There's no accident. Like maybe there was a crowd, they were in town, the crowd was talking, and he's like, "Teach us, Jesus, teach us." He's like, "Well, I'm going to teach you down by the beach today." He gets there and there's like a huge crowd around, and Jesus is like looking over all their heads. There he is. And just like try to get inside Jesus' mind and his heart as he looks at Simon Peter. He knows it all. He loves this man. And he's chosen this man. He's got Andrew there too. He knows Andrew and he loves him. He's chosen him. He's got James and John too. All of them, they're going to be his first 4 apostles. They're going to be the ones to carry on his work, the ones to lead his church. So he's looking at these, raggedy, rough and tumble, messed up people, sinners. How does Jesus look at a sinner? If Simon Peter was a sinner before he got called, how did Jesus look at him? He knew it all, and sin hurts Jesus for sure. But he saw this man's heart. He was like, that's the one that I want. That's the heart that I want. All of his willpower, all of his generosity and his zeal, and his putting his foot in his mouth, and his weak will when he promises to be with me and he's not later on. I want all of that. He's the one I've chosen. I think that's such a helpful meditation for us because we know our own faults, we know our own weakness, and sometimes we think, how the heck could God call me with all of my stupidity and my lack of talent and my sins, my mistakes, my past. Because he looks at you with the same love they looked at Simon, with the same intentionality, the same laser focus. Maybe it helps you to think about our own need to be like that, our own need to be laser focused with our mission and with our work. When we go out on a mission, we go out to serve souls in some way. You randomly get sent to Oakville, Ontario for 4 days, and you're out on a mission with a bunch of cool young men, and a bunch of pretty young ladies. You gotta be laser focused, like Jesus. Laser focused. Even with the young ladies, I'm here for your soul. I'm here because I want you to come to know Christ, because I want you to find your vocation. Right? He scans the beach because there's one thing he wants that day. There's like a million other people there. And of course he wants to teach them too. That's kind of a side note. He's using them. The crowd is just a diversion. He wanted to get on that boat. He wanted to get on that boat and have a good excuse to stand on the boat. So he made sure there was a big crowd that day and that they were pressing in on him. Jesus is in control of everything. He knows the whole story. You think about your own vocation story like mine. I mean, Jesus planned every detail of it. He knew. I mean, I'm sure I messed up a few times and he had to come up with a plan B and all that, but he had the whole thing planned. So imagine Jesus teaching on the beach. Simon is like getting curious. He's like, why are you standing right beside my boat? What do you want? And then everything that Jesus says that day is obviously directed towards them. He knows they're listening, and Simon's watching and listening, and then at one point he just turns and looks at Simon and he's like, can I get in your boat? Okay, just go out a little bit further, okay? Yeah. And you can choose which sermon he's giving, which of the words of Jesus would most impact this fisherman. The chosen proposed one, but that's just Dallas Jenkins' imagination. You've got your own creativity, so go for it. Maybe it was kind of like the speech of the king that we just meditated on. Maybe it was like that big, mean, tough, attractive manifesto. If you want to be my follower, this is what it's going to take. And Simon Peter's like, you think I'm not tough enough to do that? He's up for the challenge. Something like that. And then at the end of the talk, he's like, hey, let's go fishing. Let's go out where it's deep. And Peter is mesmerized. What makes him obey this man? Go back to what it says there. Master. So he already calls him master. He's heard him speaking for a little while. He's like, master, teacher. We toiled all night and didn't catch anything. But at your word, I will let down the nets. He's convinced. He's convinced that this man is worth listening to. There's something about him. Something about Jesus. That's one of those moments where you can pause the scene and with Simon Peter, just look at him, mesmerized, amazed. What is it about this man? What is it about his words, his demeanor, his gaze that attracts me, that makes me say yes to him, that makes me go against my gut feeling and my knowledge and my experience, that makes me obey him? And then you can play the whole scene of the catch, all the excitement, slow it down, go into detail, use your imagination. But maybe the whole time Peter is carrying this weight of his shame, because as soon as Jesus calls him, he says, "Depart from me, I'm a sinful man." So when he sees that Jesus is holy and he knows that he's a sinner, that realization probably hit him earlier on. I'm not really worthy to have you in my boat, but okay, if you say so. I'm not really worthy of going fishing with you. I'm not worthy of any miracles. So there's a lot of commotion when the catch of fish happens, right? And maybe for a moment they're all distracted. I'm sure they were all distracted for a long time. But you've got to get to the point where Simon can stop and realize what just happened, and where Jesus can say those words to him. Oh no, Jesus doesn't say anything. Jesus doesn't say anything. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees. So first they're catching the fish, and they're like, where do all these fish come from? Get over here and help us. The other guys come, they come and help them. They're pulling in all the fish. They've got their nets full. The boats are getting full. And then there's a point when Simon Peter sees it, and he's like, wait a second. And then he turns to Jesus, and then he kneels down, and he says, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man. That's when the shame hits him. He's like, I'm not worthy of this. Jesus hasn't even called him yet. He hasn't even told him what his intention is yet. And he tells him, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man. Whew. So the theme here is that intentionality of Jesus, that determination and that decision of Jesus. And then on the other On the other hand, Simon Peter, he's not worthy, but he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be perfect. God doesn't call him because he's perfect. He calls him with his unworthiness. He's going to change him and transform him and heal him as they go along with this life that they're living together, this relationship that they're living together. I love this scene because Jesus had it all planned. I think when we come closer and closer to Christ, our life will become more like that. We'll become more those men who know what we're here for. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it. Nothing is going to distract me. Nothing is going to get in my way. Because I'm on a crazy, incredible mission of love. That's the real attitude of someone who's said yes to Christ and who's living in this relationship of love with Christ. So maybe you can take a moment to put in your own words. What is your determination set on? What is your determination set on?